Okay, so you've shared some really tough material with us, these accounts from Gaza news reports. It paints a very stark picture of the food situation there.
It really does. Deeply concerning stuff.
So in this deep dive, we're going to try and get into that reality. What does it actually mean day to day when finding food becomes this desperate struggle?
And what jumps out from these sources is how it's pushing people to absolute limits, making choices. Well, choices nobody should ever face. Turning to food sources that honestly would have been unthinkable not long ago.
Unthinkable is exactly the word. We're seeing reports, like the ones you sent, about sea turtles, these, amazing endangered animals being hunted for food.
It's shocking, isn't it? And it raises so many questions immediately.
Right. So our goal here isn't just to react to the shock, but to really dig into what's driving this. These news excerpts give us glimpses, grim glimpses, and we need to connect those dots, try to grasp the real gravity of it all beyond the headlines.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the depth of the crisis, what it really means for the people living through it, not about sensationalism.
Let's start with one specific story you shared. It really brings the human side into focus. Majida Qanan in Khan Yunis, a 61-year-old woman cooking turtle meat for her family.
Just pause on that. A mother in a war zone trying to feed her kids.
The report mentioned how basic the preparation was. Boiling it, maybe some onion, pepper, a tomato if she was lucky. Spices probably long gone, maybe traded for bread. It's survival at its most raw.
And what really got me was her talking about the kids, how they were scared of it at first. She had to try and convince them it was like veal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She said some ate it, but others just went hungry instead. And this was the third time her family displaced, living in a tent, the third time they'd resorted to eating turtle.
The third time. That consistency, it just speaks volumes about the
It-
lack of anything else.
Exactly. Just a relentless, desperate shortage of basic food.
Then there's the other account, Abdelhalim Khanan, no relation, right? A fisherman.
Right. And he talks about how normally if they caught a turtle, they'd let it go, of course. They're protected.
Now.
But now the situation's flipped entirely. He sees them as, well, as vital food. He said something like, they never imagined eating turtle, but when there's no meat, no chicken, no vegetables, what else is there?
A complete reversal driven by just sheer need.
And his description of preparing it, it's grim. Getting the shell off, washing the meat with flour and vinegar because, clean running water is scarce.
Right. Flour and vinegar for washing.
Boiling it, of course, for safety, using whatever tiny bit of seasoning they might have left. But even then, he insisted on doing it the halal way, which shows how important those cultural, religious anchors remain, even in the middle of all this horror. He was very clear, though, if it wasn't famine, they wouldn't touch them. It's purely survival, protein, anything to keep going.
And this didn't happen in a vacuum, obviously. The conflict kicked off, October 2023, the Hamas attack, then the Israeli response. Devastating impact on Gaza. We saw a couple of brief ceasefires, but it seems like the blockade tightening around March of 25 really choked off the aid flow.
Yeah, that seems to be a key point in terms of exacerbating the food crisis. The restrictions just got tighter.
Looking bigger picture, the UN warnings around April last year,
Yeah.
they were incredibly stark, weren't they?
They were. They weren't just saying famine might happen. They said it was likely rapidly unfolding in almost all parts of Gaza. That's about as serious as it gets from the UN. It means widespread, critical lack of food access.
And then the World Health Organization, the WHO, in June last year, their report was just gut-wrenching. People eating animal feed, grass, drinking sewage water.
Let that sink in. Animal teat, grass, sewage. It shows the absolute rock-bottom desperation people were facing.
Which inevitably brings up the whole issue of blame, responsibility.
Yeah.
We hear Hamas accusing Israel of using starvation as a weapon, deliberately blocking aid.
And conversely, Israel alleges that Hamas diverts aid. The truth on the ground is incredibly murky, hard to verify completely.
But what's not murky is the consequence, right? The suffering of ordinary civilians. Men, women, children caught in the middle enduring this.
Absolutely undeniable.
Mashida's experience at the market, trying to find food. It just brings that huge crisis down to a personal level, doesn't it? Empty stalls, closed crossings.
And those prices. She mentioned paying the equivalent of $22 for just 2 small bags of vegetables.
$22. When you've got no income, you're living in a tent. It's meaningless. It might as well be $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. And that backs up what those 12 major aid groups said around the same time, April 25. They weren't talking about a threat of famine anymore. They said it was already a reality, happening right then.
So not a potential crisis, A full-blown humanitarian disaster unfolding.
And it's crucial we remember, as the materials highlighted, these sea turtles. They are protected internationally. Endangered.
Right. So people turning to them. It just underlines the total collapse of normalcy. Conservationists must be horrified.
Understandably, but from the fisherman's viewpoint, like Abdel Halim's, it's not malicious, it's a desperate calculation. Survival. They'd leave them alone if they had any other choice. It's this awful dilemma, isn't it? Law versus starvation.
Looking even wider, that FAO report from August 24, the numbers were just staggering.
Mind-boggling. 96% of Gaza's population facing acute food insecurity through September. Nearly 500,000 people nearing actual starvation. The scale is hard to wrap your head around.
1 in 5 Gazans going days without eating anything at all.
Anything. And the foundations for future food are just being destroyed. Over half the farmland gone, a third of the greenhouses ruined.
The fishing industry decimated. 70% of the fleet destroyed, you said.
Yeah, crippled. A key source of food and income just wiped out for many.
And it's not just fresh food, even basics, canned goods, hard to find. Bakeries, shut down. No fuel, no clean water, no flour.
Livestock starving too, because there's no feed, so less milk, less meat. It compounds everything. And then the water crisis on top of it all. Lack of clean water is critical. Disease spreads like wildfire.
Which leads straight to the healthcare system collapse. The WHO data from last year.
Yeah.
Just a handful of health centers working.
And the few hospitals still functioning were overwhelmed, operating at something like 359% capacity. Imagine that.
Unbelievable.
So you have malnutrition, dirty water, overcrowding, and a healthcare system on its knees. It's a perfect storm for disease.
There have been aid increases since the January 25 truce. Some relief, but like one report said, it's a Band-Aid on a broken leg, isn't it?
Pretty much. It helps individuals maybe, but doesn't fix the systemic problem. That FAO example, trying to get 1,500 tons of barley in for kids' milk, it just highlights the nightmare of logistics. Even when aid is there, getting it across the border is this huge, often dangerous bureaucratic tangle.
And you have groups like UNRWA on the ground doing incredible work under fire, vaccinations, aid distribution. But Philippe Lazzarini, the head of UNRWA, put it bluntly, didn't he?
He did. Basically said the aid is there right across the border. All we need is political will.
That really cuts to the chase.
It does, because you have these conflicting stories. Israel says they're approving lots of aid. Then you hear allegations of Hamas taking it, or the UN facing huge logistical hurdles, the U.S. doing airdrops, planning that pier. But the impact seems limited so far.
So it all comes back to these turtles in cooking pots. It's more than just a strange, sad story. It's a symbol, isn't it? A stark indicator of this massive systemic crisis of survival in Gaza.
It really forces you to confront some tough questions. Ethically, practically, how do you balance immediate survival needs with protecting endangered species? How do you get aid through in a war zone? What's the real human cost of all this? There are just no easy answers.
No, there aren't. And for anyone listening who wants to understand more, the reports mentioned organizations like Oxfam, UNRWA, the World Food Program. They're involved in the humanitarian response on the ground. Might be a starting point to learn more.
And thinking about Majida stirring that pot, Abdel Halim casting his nets, it's this picture of incredible human resilience, isn't it? That drive to just keep going against impossible odds.
It is. But it also just screams out the need for something more than just survival. A real long-term solution that brings back dignity, hope, a future for those kids that isn't just about wondering where the next possibly desperate meal is coming from.
Yeah, what kind of future are they growing up into? That's the question that lingers.